time as finance minister, he's now showing them what power is. Mr. Pratt.
Well, the stated objective of the Occupy Bank of Ghana demonstration was to seek the resignation or to force the resignation of the governor of the Bank of Ghana. Now, as far as I'm concerned, that's a very, very limited objective which cannot lead to the resolution of the problems that Ghana faces. Problems whose origin can be traced to the non-performance of the Bank of Ghana. So, I've heard organizers of the demonstration promise that they will go back to the Bank of Ghana again. And the reason why they intend to go back to the Bank of Ghana again is that the governor himself did not receive their petition. So ostensibly there will be another demonstration at which their petition will be presented to the governor of the Bank of Ghana. There are a number of problems with this approach. You understand? Now, you want the governor of the Bank of Ghana to resign. He has clearly told you that he would not resign. The receipt of a petition, how does it compel him to resign? Because the content of the petition is known by him. Everybody in the country knows the content of the petition. And his personal receipt of that petition does not guarantee that he will resign. So I think that we need to think, outside the box, as we say. We need to be creative in finding ways which will compel him to resign if we do think that resignation is crucial to resolving the multidimensional problems that the economy is facing today. But I think there are problems way beyond the governance of the Bank of Ghana. Many problems way beyond the governance of the Bank of Ghana. And I think that first and foremost, we need to look at the whole national economy, the direction of the national economy, and provide a new direction, a new vision of our national economy. Recourse to IMF and World Bank palliatives over the last 30, 40 years has only deepened the mess. So we need to take a position that we are no longer going to implement this World Bank IMF measures which take us nowhere, which just deepen the crisis. And in fact, if I have to use 1982-83 as my reference year, a lot of the problems we are encountering today can be traced to that era. Why? We went to the IMF and the World Bank. They gave us an economic recovery program. The emphasis of that program was deindustrialization. And deindustrialization has led to the destruction of more than 300 factories set up by the Nkrumah government in order to provide, us with the means to engage in what was called import substitution. The fact that today we are largely dependent on imports can be traced to the policy of deindustrialization. You put the policy of deindustrialization aside. We have actually even had to review our labor laws. Yes, sir. To the extent that the rights of workers to organize and to make certain demands and so on has been taken from them. So we have weakened the trade unions to the extent that they are no longer able to act as checks to governments and the wrong directions that our governments take. Look, within the first 12 months of the implementation of the economic recovery program, 300,000 workers lost their jobs. 300,000 workers lost their jobs. You understand? We agreed on a policy of withdrawal of subsidies. Withdrawal of subsidies from on social services. That included health, that included education and so on. And these consequences have been dire, on us. Now, this pursuit of the neoliberal agenda is, to say the least, absolutely stupid. This neoliberal agenda has not worked anywhere in the world. Any country which has pursued the neoliberal agenda within the last 30, 40 years is in crisis. Almost all of the African economies are in crisis. And you can trace this crisis to the pursuit of the neoliberal agenda. It doesn't make sense and we need to change. Now also in the pursuit of the neoliberal agenda, we came to accept this notion, and I don't know what happens to our leaders, that your central bank needs to be independent. And I'm wondering, why? All of us go to an election and we give our power to one person, the president. You understand? Now, in exercising that power, the president realizes that he cannot be Captain Planet and that he needs to bring other people on board to assist him to achieve his objective. So he appoints many people, including a governor of the Bank of Ghana, to assist him to realize his own policy objectives and so on. And then we enact laws which say that the president who appointed the governor of the Bank of Ghana has no control over the governor of the Bank of Ghana. President cannot sack the governor of the Bank of Ghana. Our president cannot disagree with the governor of Bank of Ghana, even over monetary policy issues and so on. We have turned the governor of the Bank of Ghana into a god. So when it comes to monetary policy and so on, he actually has more powers than the president. I think it's an untenable situation. It's an untenable situation which we have imposed upon ourselves under the marching orders of the IMF and the World Bank. And that situation should not persist forever. That situation should not be accepted. The people we give our powers to solve the problems for us need to take full responsibility for their actions. Not surrogates that we didn't choose. Not surrogates who were chosen at the pleasure of presidents and so on. They should not be those who have ultimate responsibility for shaping the economic destiny of our country. That's the first mistake. Now, my brother, I look at the structure of the Bank of Ghana, and I am totally shocked that we have accepted this structure. You look at the structure of the Bank of Ghana. There's a board. The chairman of the board, which has responsibility for supervising the bank, is the governor of the Bank of Ghana. How come that we have a structure which makes the chief executive of the bank also the chairman of the body which is supposed to be supervising his work? It doesn't make any sense at all. And yet I don't hear anybody talking about this structure which is ab initio defective. Why? Would we accept a situation? I remember that in the 1980s or thereabout, I think it was Mr. Chachuchiketa who once, under some circumstances, started chairing the board of GNPC. And we raised hell in this country that the chief executive cannot also be chair of the board. But we have accepted this situation in the Bank of Ghana. How come? You understand? It gets worse. If you look at the structure of the Bank of Ghana, the board sits on top. And then there's a monetary policy something which comes second, and the governor comes third. When the board meets, the governor presides over meetings of the board. When it comes to monetary policy committee or whatever, the governor again presides over that meeting. And then he comes down to third position as chief executive. What madness is this? And this has nothing to do with who the governor of Bank of Ghana is. It's a structural problem. In fact, for those of you who went to good schools, those of you who went to Oxford and Harvard and co-millennium, you say that these are governance issues. How is that a governance issue? Don't forget your nice language, you know. This is madness. Complete madness. You don't establish an institution like this and expect that it will work to achieve results. You understand? Now, you've allowed IMF and World Bank and so on to tell you that, look, as for the governor, he's a god. Nobody can interfere his work. He does as he pleases and so on. You have accepted that. And yet, the IMF has found it necessary to appoint an advisor to the governor who is sitting in the Bank of Ghana telling the governor what to do. Our president cannot tell the governor what to do. Our institutions have no control over the governor. But the IMF has somebody sitting in the bank, sitting on top of the governor and telling him what to do. If this is not crazy, what is? So there are these fundamental problems that we need to address. Now, beyond these fundamental problems are also issues of the direction of our policy. Now, all of these so-called international institutions, over-glorified institutions and so on, effectively, what are they telling us? Effectively, they are telling us that if we want to develop, we have to adopt the models of development of the United States of America, of Britain, of Germany, of France, and so on. This is the only reason for the imposition of the neoliberal order on us. They say we should take the path of capitalist development. That is what they are imposing on us. And unfortunately, our leaders stopped thinking a long time ago. You understand? So our leaders do not ask the fundamental questions. How did the United States of America attain its current level of development? How did Britain attain its current level of development? First and foremost, these countries achieved their current levels of development through the transatlantic slave trade, where they brought millions of Africans, our forebears, to work for them for hundreds of years without pay, to accumulate a certain basis of wealth on which capitalism is built. You understand? So today, if you are to follow the example of the United States of America, if you are to follow the example of Britain and others, somebody must be telling us which people we can also go and capture as slaves and use as beasts of burden in order to build that wealth on which capitalism is structured today. It is not a possibility. You understand? The second instrument which led to the levels of so-called advancement of Western capitalist states today is colonial exploitation. Colonial exploitation gave them the wealth on which they build their so-called current prosperity. Now, today, Ghana, we are being told to follow Britain. Which countries are you going to colonize in order to steal their wealth to build capitalism? It is also not an option. Continuing your colonial exploitation is also responsible for the levels of development of so-called Western countries. And look at the story of Niger. You understand? Look at the story of Niger and uranium exports to France. That should tell you a whole lot. That option is also not available to us. So if you are to get out of this quagmire, if you are to get out of this economic mess, we need to think outside the box. And given the fact that slavery is not an option, given the fact that colonial exploitation is not an option, given the fact that neo-colonial exploitation is not an option, our only option is the development, the building of self-reliant national economies within the context of projected Pan-African unity. That's the only option available to us. You don't have any other option. You understand? And within this framework, within which we derive our new option, the key things are, one, how to own your own resources and two, how to exploit those resources for the benefit of your people. That's all. As for this tinkering with the economy, some advice leading to the devaluation of our national currency and so on. And I'm happy that my brother Ricketts, Honorable Ricketts, is here with me. Perhaps he understands the economy better than I do. Check the figures. Between 1983 and now, our national currency has been devalued by between 26,000 and 30,000%. Check the figures. Check the figures. Why would prices not shoot up? Why would workers not face the problems they're facing now when you deliberately and foolishly devalue your national currency by between 26,000 and 30,000%? So that is what the problem is. Today, if you remove Governor Addison and continue the pursuit of these reckless policies, things will continue to get worse. If you remove Governor Addison today and we continue going to the World Bank for bailouts, for solutions to the national crisis and so on, the problems will be exacerbated. And Sana, I was sitting in my poor house in Musuku, and I was listening to some of our friends, on the so-called minority side. I don't know how they came to accept that they are the minority. It just baffles me. It just adds to the confusion, you understand? How out of 137, one group came to accept that it is the minority. Strange behavior. But one of them, and I was listening to him, and that day, my brother, I nearly cried. So this gentleman, honorable gentleman, is asked that what is the alternative? And so on. He says, the Akufo-Addo government, they should have gone to the IMF much earlier. The problem is that they delayed in going to the IMF. So what? This is the alternative? They should have gone much earlier. They should have planned themselves into the problem much earlier. Unbelievable. And then he's asked, why do you say so? He says, when the IMF comes in, they're able to instill some discipline in the economy. You need the IMF to teach you discipline? My goodness. Why in hell did you come to us to vote for you when all you need is the IMF to make you discipline? Can't believe it. And they say these things openly without shame. Because they come to believe that all of us are just yo-yos. They can say anything to us. That Akufo-Addo's government should have rushed to the IMF. They should have gone much earlier. They delayed too much. That's the problem. Why? We ought to be asking ourselves some very important basic questions. You go to the IMF. They tell you to freeze employment. And unemployment is one of the major problems. Our economic planners must necessarily have an aim to reduce unemployment. Okay? But you go to the IMF and say, no, you reduce employment. Don't employ people in the public sector. There's a freeze on public sector employment. You go to the IMF and the World Bank and they tell you that, look, you have to withdraw subsidies on social services. And the provision of social services in Africa, in the so-called third world, is a necessity for every government who thinks about the people. And then you go and accept these conditions. You understand? Without questioning the motives. Because if you begin to question the motives, one of the things which becomes clear is that the World Bank and the IMF were not established to help you solve your internal problems. They were not established to help you create jobs for the teeming workers who cannot get access to jobs. They were not established to expand social services in your country. They were not established to make it possible for you to build gutter. You know gutter. They were established primarily, how do they say, primarily or primarily? Sometimes I get confused about that. Primarily. And that's me and you, our English.
The Harvard people say primarily.
So my brother, primarily. Anyway. But we established primarily to ensure the integrity of the Western financial system. That's the main objective. So they tell you not to employ more people, so that the money you use to pay workers will be saved so you can pay your loans and interest on your loans. They tell you not to expend on social services, so that money we are going to spend on social services would accumulate for the purpose of protecting the integrity of Western financial institutions. And our leaders agree. You know, yesterday, I did a very long interview with a television station in Tanzania. A very long interview, more than an hour. And they asked me a certain question. And I was the first time that question had been thrown at me, you know. They asked me a certain question about the way forward for Africa. And whether or not, I don't think that Chinese aid to Africa, you know, is not substantially different from Western aid. You understand? And the kinds of agreements that our leaders are signing with the Chinese government is questionable and so on. So I began to reflect in the course of the interview. And I said, these people, why blame China? Let us assume that the agreements are bad. I don't think that the agreements are bad. But let us agree that the agreements are bad. You should be questioning the people you have elected who are negotiating and signing bad agreements. The Chinese are not telling us to elect idiots as presidents. We elect the idiots ourselves. So if we are not happy with the performance of the idiots, let's make sure that when we go to the next election, we don't elect idiots. That solves the problem. But for as long as we continue electing idiots, for as long as we continue electing leaders who have thrown their thinking caps into the sea, they will be signing these agreements for us. And we will be bound by these agreements, and we will never be able to develop. So what next after the Bank of Ghana demonstration? I think there's a lot of work that has to be done. So much work that has to be done. We have to begin to question the economic direction we have taken since February 24th, 1966. Where has it taken us? When the CIA overthrew the Nkrumah government and imposed their own government on us and gave that government direction, where has that direction led us to? We need to question that. After this demonstration, we need to look at the structure of the Bank of Ghana, whether it can serve our purpose or not. We need to rethink the structure of the Bank of Ghana. After this demonstration, we need to be dreaming big. We need to be thinking about the final destination that we want to go. If all we want to do is to embark upon another demonstration and compel the governor to personally receive our petition, I don't think that we are going very far. We are going very far. There's something else that I want to talk about. You know, the governor has granted an interview after the demonstration. And I think he's made some of the most unfortunate statements that any public officer should make. In that interview, the government is actually subversive. The governor of the Bank of Ghana is clearly subversive of some of the provisions in the 1992 Constitution, which created his office and made it possible for him to be appointed as governor. He is trampling on the right of people to protest. He's trampling on the right of people to freely express themselves. He describes demonstrators as hooligans. A most unfortunate statement to come from anybody who has any self-respect and anybody who is committed to constitutional rule. Your self-expression, free expression, is the foundation of this so-called constitution. That's what they claim. He is kicking that foundation. He's kicking it. The governor says if you demonstrate, you're a hooligan. That there are better ways of self-expression. He should have told this story to the man who appointed him. Because the man who appointed him, I disagree with my sister here, that he's organized the most demonstrations or participated in the most. It's not true. He's organized a few demonstrations. Okay? I know that in 1979, he was part of the People's Movement for Freedom and Justice. And he, along with the Dubuahine, Kobna, Beligbedema, and so on, organized 2 demonstrations. One in Accra and one in Kumasi. After that, he didn't participate in any demonstration until May 11, 1995, when the Kwesi Pratt demonstration was organized. He cannot be the master of demonstrations or the man who has organized the most demonstrations in this country. It is not true. Because even between 1982 and 1995, I can count on my fingertips at least 25 to 30 demonstrations which were organized that he didn't take part in, that he didn't inspire, and so on. So that accolade, please go easy on it. It is these things which eventually lead to fudging our history. Now, see, I hear many people in the NPP say, for example, that it was Professor Dubuahine who broke the culture of silence. It's not true. It's false. Okay? But they say this for immediate gain and immediate gratification, so on. And in that way, history is distorted. Nana Akufo-Addo is not the foremost demonstrator or organizer of demonstrations in our country. It's not true. You understand? But he took part in some demonstrations. Indeed, on 11th May 1995, he was the spokesperson, not leader. Spokesperson, not leader, of the group which organized the historic Kwesi Pratt demonstration, which puts on the streets of Accra an estimated 100,000 people. Unprecedented at the time. But in a few weeks, that record was shattered by another demonstration in Kumasi, then called the Kwesi Pratt demonstration. And the estimate was that 500,000 people were put on the streets of Kumasi. So that, as far as I'm concerned, today is the standing record, not Kwesi Pratt. Okay? Of course, Kwesi Pratt gained a lot of attention and so on because of the reckless armed attack on the demonstrators. Okay? But be that as it may, if Governor Addison thinks that those who participate in demonstrations and organize demonstrations are hooligans, he should send his message to the more appropriate quarters. And he will find that in that quarters sits the man who made him governor of the Bank of Ghana. I am so disgusted by that statement. The arrogance that it portrays. Why? Governor? Who pays the governor? The truck driver who has not gone to school. Who doesn't perhaps, when we talk about monetary policy, who gets lost and so on. His taxes pay the governor of the Bank of Ghana. The Makola woman. And it's not just that their taxes pay the governor of the Bank of Ghana, it is their power that the governor of Ghana exercises. You understand? It is the power of the illiterate, the uneducated and so on, that is exercised by the governor of the Bank of Ghana. Not just the governor of the Bank of Ghana. When Jill Mensah sits and chairs the Electoral Commission and makes pronouncements about her independence and her power and so on, what is she talking about? She's talking about the power that the people of Ghana transferred on December 7th, 2020 to Nana Akufo-Addo. That's all she's talking about. It's not her power. The arrogance of public officers must be brought to an end. And I'm so very disgusted by this plain exhibition of arrogance and intolerance by the governor. Forget how the economy has been messed up. As a matter of fact, one of his responsibilities is to ensure that prices do not unreasonably rise. Control of pricing. That's one of the responsibilities of the governor. If you look at prices of all things within the last 2 years, you don't need an economist to tell you that the governor has failed. Yesterday I was discussing the price of kinky. Do you know that one ball of kinky, the price has now reached 5 cedis? Do you know that? 5 cedis for one ball of kinky. So if you happen to eat like somebody I know, so why are you laughing? Why are you laughing? If you happen to eat like somebody I know who in one sitting can blow 6 balls, you're in trouble. 6 times 5. You understand? Now that alone is an indication of failure. That alone is a clear indication of failure. And in any case, when the governor says, I'm not going in, I'm sitting here, what does he think of himself? That he can decide that he's sitting there. Even the president can be sacked. Even the president of the republic can be sacked. When the people of this country decide, they can sack anybody. And as a matter of fact, what they also forget is that the very institutions they preside over can be abolished. We, the people of Ghana, tomorrow can decide that we don't need the Bank of Ghana. And that we need another institution. It will be constitutional, it will be perfect, and will be right. Why? We can even decide that we don't want parliament. Parliament is the creation of the power of the people. The people of Ghana can decide tomorrow that we don't want a president. And it will be perfect. We, the people, decide the instruments of government that we want. In fact, we can decide that we don't want a Supreme Court anymore. That from tomorrow, there will be no Supreme Court, and there will be no Supreme Court, and this country will not collapse. So those who occupy these positions must be minded by the fact that the only power and authority that is supreme is the power of the people. Finish.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And that concludes our very first discussion. Question of what next after Occupy BOG demonstration. And of course, if you've been with us, we've been discussing this.